everyone, welcome back to today's video. Today is going to be a really in-depth step-by-step tutorial on how to create a half cut crease eye look. So these are the colors that I use today, but the way I explain things, hopefully you can take this technique and apply it to any color story that you want. I just love this eye look. This is what I go to when I don't know how I want to do my makeup. I just kind of do this as default. It's pretty dramatic. It's not your everyday look, but if you're looking for something more glam, this is it, sis. Anyways, I am going to go now. It looks like it's gonna rain and I want to go grocery shopping and I don't really want my full face to get ruined because I just put it on. So if you're interested in how to achieve this eye look, then just keep watching. Okay, so let's get started. For today's video, I'm going to be using the Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe. Caribe. I can't say that. I'm so sorry if you speak Spanish and you're so offended by me butchering that. Reina del Caribe eyeshadow palette, volume 1. The reason I am going to use this palette is because it's not overwhelming. It only has 8 shades and that's basically the only reason that, and I haven't used it in a really long time, and the formula is so good. So let's get started. This technique that I'm about to show you can work for pretty much any color story that you choose. I'm gonna go for warm neutrals because that's just what's in this palette. However, you can really apply this kind of look to any color story you want. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab a fluffy blending brush. This is the Sigma E40 tapered blending. It's just nice and big and fluffy. And I'm going to go in with this light orange shade here called Cocoa Taxi. So I've already applied some primer. I like to use Tarte Shape Tape Concealer and then set it with powder. You can use any eye primer that you choose, but it's really important that you set it down with a translucent or pressed powder. This is really important for this technique in particular. I know some people don't set it, but then they do it a different way. They start with their darkest shade. This is just the way I find is the easiest to learn from. If you don't set your base and it remains a little bit tacky, you do get more pigmented shadows, but they are a lot harder to blend out. So this technique is much more beginner friendly and it's what I personally like to do because I just find that the shadows just blend a lot more seamlessly. So back to what I was saying, I'm going to take the lightest shade in the palette. It has to be a matte shade. It's called Cocoa Taxi. It's a light orange. So what you want to do is just take the lightest shade that you're going to be working with and get it on the big fluffy brush and just kind of buff it into not your crease. The crease of the eye would be, mine is right here, so where my eye folds in. I'm gonna blend it just above. And you want to place your brush down where you want the most pigment. So I want the most pigment on the outer corner because that's the most flattering, I think, for most eye shapes. And then you kind of want to blend upwards because you want it to diffuse and blend out. So you want to start and place your brush where you want the most pigment to be, which would be lower in the crease for this look in particular. So say you wanted to do this technique but with a purple, you're going to take the lightest matte purple that you would be using and you're going to do this same technique but with that color. You also want to make sure that the colors you're using are in the same color family. So today I'm going to be using an orange, a brighter orange, and a darker brown. All three of them have a warm neutral undertone. You don't want to mix, you know, really polar opposite colors, especially not if you're kind of a beginner or you're in a rush and you don't want to spend too much time on it. I just say that because if the colors are opposite on the color wheel, I'll put a little picture of a color wheel right here. If they're opposite and you try to blend them together, it's going to create brown. So you want to make sure that these colors are in the same color family, just so you don't risk the colors getting muddy as you blend, because that's happened to me so many times when I've tried to like mix green and red and I'm like, oh, this will be super cool looking. A lot of the times it won't be. Of course, if you have the time to experiment, that might be something fun. However, it's just, you know, if you're a beginner and you want a successful look, maybe it's not the best way to start. So I'm just taking that light orange shade and building up the color and kind of diffusing it up into the brow bone where we want the color to be the less the least pigmented. And then what I like to do is just take a little blending brush. This is a Sigma E25, and I like to take a little bit of powder foundation. You can use whatever powder you used to set your eye area, whether that be a translucent powder. I personally like just having this pressed one, but if you don't have that, that's totally fine. And I just like grabbing a little bit on this little tiny brush, and I just kind of like to blend in between where the orange color starts and where my brow bone ends. So I didn't take it as high as my brow bone, so kind of where that line is, it kind of just helps to soften it just a little bit. And then I'm just going to go back in with this blending brush with no additional product, and I'm just going to go over that one more time just to make sure everything is super duper soft. Okay, next you're gonna need a smaller brush. I'm going in with, again, a Sigma E25. This is a different one, and you wanna go into your darker shade. So for this, I'm going to use this shade here called Tropico. It's just a darker orange. I won't have a hard time blending the two because this is just a lighter, probably a bit more yellow version of this one. They're going to blend together nice and seamlessly because they have similar undertones and are similar-ish shades. What I wouldn't recommend doing is like taking a gray or like a blue and placing that in the crease, because that might clash with this orange and make it either really muddy, or they just might not blend together, or if they do, it might create like a funky brown color. So I wouldn't recommend doing something like that. I would definitely, if you use a light orange like I did, recommend keeping it in the warmer tone family. So I'm going in again with this darker orange shade. I'm just picking it up on a Sigma E25. I'm just picking up a little bit. And you want this blending brush to be quite a bit smaller than the first one you used. And I'm just going to place my brush on the outer corner because that's where I want the most pigment to be. And I'm going to just start blending much lower and actually keep it in my crease. So where my eye folds, I want to keep it low down there. I'm not bringing it up like we did that light orange shade. And I'm just gonna go back and forth a little bit. I'm gonna pick up a little more product because I want it to be a bit more pigmented, but it's always better to go with less and build up than to go with more and try to take it away, because that almost never works. Okay, so now that we have that color down, I like to go back in with my original blending brush, and I'm not gonna take any additional product on it, just what was left over from when we were blending before, and I'm just going to go over the edges of both of these colors. I just personally like windshield wiper motions and little circular motions. Whatever blending technique you find the best, just use that, I guess. And now what I'm gonna do is take a little bit of the light orange Cocoa Taxi and a little tiny bit of this Tropico shade and just go back and forth, and then I'm gonna tap it off, and I'm also going to tap the excess on the back of my hand so that we have a really sheer amount of product. And then I'm just gonna go back over with this blending brush just over that edge, just to further marry those two shades together. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is go in with the darkest shade. I am going to use the shade Cafecito. It's just a dark brown. I could also use this Guantanamera shade because it's darker than the Tropico shade. However, I kind of want to go for a more brown look. So I'm going to pick this up on a Stilazzi Large Flat Shadow S224. And what I'm going to do is just place this just on the outer corner of my eyelid. I'm not bringing it up into the crease, just like that. And then what I'm gonna do is grab a small pencil brush. This is a Stilazzi Precision Pencil S219, and I'm just going to use this pencil brush to bring it up into the crease. And I'm gonna keep this even lower. It's really important that you use a really small brush for this because you don't wanna take the brown all over the eye and overpower all of the blending you just did. And then I'm just gonna take the Sigma Blending E25 again with no additional product and just kind of buff that edge of where it meets the other two shades. I don't worry about blending this part because when I cut the crease with concealer, that's gonna cover up this whole lid space anyways. So now that I've blended a little bit, you can see that it kind of got patchy on the lid. That's because I was blending away the pigment that we had originally placed down. So I just like to go back in with that flat shadow brush and just apply a bit more, because nobody wants patchiness. It's not a cute look. And then what I do is take the Sigma Blending E25 and just boop of the Cafecito shade, and then I flick the brush to get off the excess, not access. And I just, again, go over the outer corner. I don't want to bring it into the inner corner. You can, I'm just choosing not to today because I really want to keep it focused on the outer corner. And then I'm also going to take a little bit more of Tropico, and I'm just going to also place that where the two colors meet. And then I'm also going to go in with that original Sigma E40, the big blending brush with no product on it, and just kind of go over that once more. Okay, so now that the blending is done, I'm going to cut the crease. So a lot of people use a thick concealer for this. I personally really like to use a thinner foundation. The exception to this is when I do something really dark and deep in my crease. Then I like to use a bit of a more full coverage concealer, but for just, you know, to cover this, I really like to use something thinner, so I use foundation. My favorite is the Ordinary High Coverage Foundation for this. I just take like a little tiny dabble of that. And the reason I like to use a foundation is because since it is thinner, it's a lot easier to manipulate, and it's also a lot less, you know, thick and crepey on the lids. So in order to do this, I feel like I should zoom you in a little bit. Okay, so now that we're up close and personal, I just like to kind of dab it on the lid, and then I kind of look towards a mirror, so I look straight ahead, and I like to take it above where my crease folds in. So I kind of create a little bit of a cut crease there, and then I look straight ahead to see if it's above or below my crease line. As you can tell, my crease is here and the concealer is above it. I hope you can see that. You can keep it like just along your crease, but I find when I do that, since the crease of my eyes personally fold in a little bit, they're just ever so slightly hooded. Whenever I create a cut crease that's just along my natural crease, whenever I open my eye, the product that's on my lid, which is usually a shimmer shade, transfers onto my upper lid. So I did all of this hard blending work and it just gets ruined with shimmer, and there's like a line of shimmer across where I blended, and I don't really like that look. So you can do whatever you want. If you're more comfortable and you don't have hooded eyes, then you can totally just follow your natural crease. But the way I do it, I like to take it slightly above just for some more added staying power, because then you won't have that whole folding in issue. So I just like to create a smooth line. And I like to stop about where I started putting the dark shade. So I kind of like to leave, I'd say, the outer quarter of my lid, or maybe the outer third, probably outer quarter. And then I just like to smooth it out a little bit, and then I check and I look straight ahead to see if I like the shape. I think it's a little bit wonky out in this part, so I'm gonna fix it a little bit, and that's it for the concealer part. Then you can add a shimmer or matte shade on top, and this is where you can get a little bit creative. So I'm gonna go into this light silvery green here called El Malaisan. Oh god, I'm so sorry. And I'm just gonna grab this on a synthetic brush. I like to use shimmers on synthetic brushes because I think they apply nicer, and I just am going to follow where I cut that crease. This is where you can get a little more creative because you can kind of mix shades since you're not doing any blending. Since you're not blending this green into the orange up here, you're keeping that line between the two very sharp. You can kind of get away with applying, you know, colors that are opposite of the color wheel if that's something that you really do want to do. This is definitely an easier way to do it. Just because you're not marrying the two colors together, you're just creating a sharp line in between them, and then you don't run the risk of having the two shades, you know, get muddy. When it comes to the outer corner, I like to take it a little farther than where I took my concealer, just to make sure, or foundation I suppose, just to make sure that there's no tacky areas. If there is a tacky area and you try to apply a matte shade on top of it, it's gonna stick to that tackiness, and then it's gonna have like one really dark patch, and then the rest is going to be nice and soft. So I don't really want a patchy eyeshadow look, so I'm going to make sure that there's no tacky foundation left. And then what I like to do is go back into the dark brown, so whatever you used on your outer corner, and I'm just going to start where the brown is still visible and kind of pull it in just to blend it into the green shade. And then I kind of like to apply it onto the shimmer a little bit and just kind of flick it inwards until you're comfortable with the blend that you have. And if you find that you use too much of the brown shade, you can go back in and use more green just to kind of go back and forth and make sure everything is super seamless. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm just going to apply some liquid liner to my upper lash line. And I'm not gonna wing it out just because honestly, I don't really feel like it. It creates a lot of work that could potentially ruin my eyeshadow if I do a crappy job. So I'm just gonna keep it really tight to the lash line just to make sure that my lashes will blend in nicely. And yeah, that's it. I'm just gonna do my foundation and then we can move on to the lower lash line and finish up the look. Okay, so I have my base on and now all I have to do is apply concealer. So I'm gonna use my Too Faced Born This Way, and I'll show you what I like to do to kind of clean this area up a little bit. So I apply concealer as I normally would, and I kind of stop where the end of my eye stops, and then I will grab some concealer and put it on the back of my hand, and then I take the same brush that I used to cut my crease and I just kind of wipe it off so there's no shadow or leftover foundation on it, and I just dip it in the concealer and I kind of just draw a line from the corner of my eye to my brow. You can make this super sharp if you want, but that's not really the vibe that I personally like for every day, so I'm not going to. And then I usually blend it out with a sponge, but all my sponges are really dirty and all my brushes are really dirty and I don't want to get up to go wet my sponge, so I'm just going to use a brush and I'm just gonna blend it out. I think I applied too much. Story of my freaking life, man. And then just be really careful about that little edge that you created and just blend it out as you normally would, just like that. And I'm going to do my other eye off camera and then I'm gonna set it and I'll be right back and we can work on the lower lash line. Okay, so now I have set my under eye and my entire face. You wanna make sure that you set everything really well because again, you don't want anything tacky because the shadows will grab to it and it's gonna be patchy. It's not gonna be a good situation. So just make sure, I always kind of run my finger under to make sure that everything's set, and it looks like everything's set pretty nicely. So if you feel anything sticky, maybe just go in with some more powder. So what I like to do is grab the little pencil brush I use for my outer corner and kind of wipe off the brush a little bit so that there's not quite so much of the darkest shade on there. And I like to go in with the medium crease shade that we used. So in this case it's Tropico, and I'm just going to run this along my lower lash line, keeping it really tight, just like that. And then I like taking a little blending brush. This is the one that we used with the powder foundation on it way back at the beginning of the video, and I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Cocoa Taxi, just a smidge of it, and I'm going to run that a little bit lower and kind of use that to buff out the darker shade. Make sure that this is either a clean brush or the one that had the powder foundation on it. You don't want like tons of color on it because that could get messy really quickly and then you might look like you have a black eye and no one wants that. And then what I like to do is take a little more of that light shade and kind of connect it to the upper lid a little bit, just like that. And then I'm going to add some liner and lashes and we'll be all finished. Okay, and this is the completed look. I added some liner on my waterline, some lashes, and a lip, and this is it. This is one of my favorite techniques to do. I just find it's fairly foolproof. Whenever I'm feeling stumped on what I want to do with my makeup, this is just usually what I go to because I don't know, I just think it turns out really pretty almost every time. Sometimes it can get a little funky if, you know, I get adventurous, but if I keep it safe, this technique is foolproof. So I'll just zoom you in quickly so you can see the final eyes. I love this green color, man. I just find it so unique. I don't really think I have anything like it in my collection. It's just gorgeous. I'm wearing the Flower Beauty lipstick. This is in the shade Naked Blush. It tastes like soap. Never noticed that before. really tastes like, so wow. Anyways, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed. I hope you found this video informative. Let me know if you want to see like a full cut crease tutorial, because this one is more of a half cut crease because we had the outer corner, but a full cut crease, you would extend the concealer and kind of flick it upwards. I'll insert a little photo here. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, a tutorial on those. Those aren't my strongest suit. Like, I feel like this eye look is like what I'm really good at. So let me know if you'd like to see a tutorial on that. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, please subscribe if you have not yet, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.